not actually live, but live recording. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Terrestrial. I run the Sasquatch Data Project, which is basically my attempt at parsing all of the BFRO reports initially. I want to move into other data sets too and stuff, but basically putting those witness reports into a format that's optimized for data analysis and particularly statistical analysis. So that's I guess what the essence of what I do in regards to Bigfoot.
So yeah, and it's amazing, frankly. I like this has been long coming, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's something that's really needed to be done, like so bad.
Really needed to be done. Right. For sure. Like I remember we would sit, so we actually started, me and a couple friends started a nonprofit kind of in the idea of going this direction. We just could never really make it happen like you have. So, but with that being said, we would just sit and always wonder, like, well, how many sightings, like within, like, certain geographical areas have there been of like blonde Sasquatches, things like that. And
Yeah.
I think it matters, that stuff matters for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I agree that this is something that has really needed to be done, at least on the BFRO data set and any other data sets too. I've started to incorporate like NAWAC's, North American Wooded Conservancy's data set and stuff into the Sasquatch Data Project data set. But I know that there has been some analysis done on at least John Green's data set.
Yeah.
Fehrenbach's dived, he's gone into it. And there's another doctor that's it's escaping me what his name is, but he actually did, like, I was reading his paper the other day and it was extremely in depth into John Green's data set. But we really needed someone to dive into the BFRO stuff too. Cause like there's so much information there that hasn't been tapped.
Yeah.
So
much. Yeah. I see your casts behind you. Those are amazing.
Yes, I love the footprint casts. They're one of my favorite things to collect.
Awesome. Yeah. Where do you get them usually? Are they yours or?
No, I haven't taken these. These are all, I think most of them are like first gen copies of casts. All of these came from the North American Bigfoot Center.
Okay.
So I ordered them online.
Yeah. Of course I don't have it displayed. I don't know why not. I've got one from them as well. So
oh, cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. All right. So what got you into this whole high strangeness, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, because we're a giant genre, really. Mm-hmm. And it bleeds into so many different things. So what got you into this in the first place?
Really? I think it's a funny story. We'll see.
Go right ahead.
When I was like 5 years old, my dad, I'll start off with this. He has always been kind of interested in like more paranormal stuff, like ghosts and that kind of thing. So I have this really vivid memory of being like 5 years old. I'm sitting on the couch with my dad. And we had been watching TV all day because he was like prepping for a colonoscopy the next day. So we were just watching TV and we had it on the Discovery Channel. So we had been watching like ghost shows and we had been watching all that kind of stuff. But then Doug Hychek's Sasquatch Legend Meets Science came on. And that's where I saw the Patterson-Gimlin film for the first time. And I just remember my brain like exploding. I was like, this is the most magnificent yet mortifying thing I've ever seen in my whole life.
Absolutely.
So that's like what kicked off at least my interest for Bigfoot. So like while my dad was fighting for his life next to me, I was like having my whole life just kind of, I don't know, we beelined for this Bigfoot thing. But that's kind of how I got kicked off and started. And I've always been interested in it. Life kind of took me a different way though, where I went down like a planetary science path for a while, and then I kind of came back. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. That is a funny story. It's good.
Thanks.
But of
It's like
course, Doug
so random.
Highcheck had something to do with
I
it
know.
because it feels like his body of work has something to do with everybody's uh,
Mhm.
introduction, right? And Patterson Gimlin, I, to me, it's one of those things that's never been in question. Like
Yeah.
I, I just don't. I think it's legit as it gets, and yeah, pretty amazing.
It is. It's an amazing piece of footage. And I know that one of the things is like people always say, we've never been able to disprove it. So we can't count it out, which is true. We've never been able to disprove it. But I will say there are some interesting things that I've seen, at least in the footprint data, that also, like, kind of, at least in my mind, point to its legitimacy. Because I know a lot of people have a problem with Patty's new height estimate being, smaller than what
Yeah,
people have at least assumed Sasquatches were. But just from some things that I've seen in the footprint data, and I've kind of touched on it on some stuff I posted online, but her height actually isn't really that big of an issue. It
not
actually
really.
falls quite well into at least what the footprint data suggests. Um, so yeah, I love the Patterson Gimlin film. It's I have a pic that's I have Patty on my wall.
Oh, I see it there. Yeah, yeah. So what? So after, so what? When did you start doing this? When did you start crunching this data? And I'll say crunching. Correct me if I'm, you
Oh
know.
no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, so I started the Sasquatch Data Project in 2023. It's something that I had had in the back of my mind for a couple of years, especially when COVID happened. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, I got all this time. Like, what can I do? And
What can I do?
yeah, so I kind of had this like idea. I actually got this idea when I was in college. But at the time, I was working on NASA's Dawn mission. And that was like taking all of my focus, was working on that, trying to get through college and that kind of thing. So once I graduated, I realized I wanted to do something else. And I don't know, it's been kind of a winding path, but eventually I ended up with like, well, my true passion in life is researching Sasquatches. I don't live in a great place to go out into the field and do that. How can I do that, with my skills and resources? And well, I really love math. I really love data analysis. I might as well do this. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I got started with just creating the Sasquatch Data Project.
Do you ever go out in the field? Are
So
you
my
ever able
parents,
to?
yeah, I grew up in Northeast Georgia. I
Okay.
actually grew up like 10 minutes away from where they filmed the first Finding Bigfoot episode.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've had some really weird things happen on my parents' property because they own about 25 acres and it backs up to like 200 acres of just nothingness. So whenever I go visit them, I basically spend all of my time in the woods, um, like looking. I have an audio recorder going 24/7, and I did a like 3 month long audio project. When I was there, I went and spent like 3 months with them last year. So I'll do stuff like that when I can, but most of my work is unfortunately, but fortunately,
Right.
behind a
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah, yeah. I got you. Hey, somebody's got to do all the stuff, right? So it's
Yeah,
not a,
there's a place for everyone,
there's a place
honestly.
for everyone for sure. So what data, if we take this just starting down, what is the most shocking data that you found? Like that in your opinion, that is kind of like hit you and you're like, wow. I mean, and it doesn't have to just be one. It can be, whatever. But stuff that shocked you.
I would say, the first thing that came to mind, and probably because we kind of touched on it, is like this clustering of different hair colors is pretty interesting. There is a definite cluster of, blonde Sasquatches in Alabama, which is very unusual, at least to me. And there's particular clusters of white and gray Sasquatches also in Alabama, but more so in the South versus the Western United States. So that in itself I thought was very interesting. Also, the difference in like red brown Sasquatch reports is statistically significant between the Western and Southern United States as well, where the South has more reports. So stuff like that's very interesting to me because those are just like little differences that wouldn't be super obvious if you were like hoaxing, or like if all these reports were just like this massive hoaxing campaign or whatever. Like that's very odd. That's
There's
very
just
strange.
enough nuance that you're like,
Right. So that's been interesting. Probably one of my favorite things lately to think about and to talk about is this other thing I've seen in the data where basically I went through and categorized witness fear levels from no fear to extreme. And there's like 5 different categories: no fear, mild, moderate, elevated, extreme. But I found in Class A sightings, as witness fear level increases, so does the average height of the Sasquatch. And that difference in height between the extreme and the mild group is statistically significant. That was shocking because that not only brings into like consideration of, okay, well, if this is like a massive hoaxing campaign, they would have had to coordinated that over hundreds of reports, over, you know, a 60-year time span and 17 different states. Like that's crazy.
right.
But it also plays into human psychology. You know, when witnesses or when humans are scared, they can perceive the stimulus as larger than it actually is, sometimes up to 30% larger.
Which
And
is pretty significant.
that's very significant, especially when we're talking about like, I think the figure was 80% of Sasquatch heights, 8.5 feet or more that were estimated from the witness, happened in these elevated and extreme fear groups. So that's at least
that's
powerful to
actually
me.
that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was shocking for me as a data nerd, but I don't know if it's like shocking, like I don't know, the Sasquatch was doing something crazy. Usually the reports are pretty mundane, if I'm honest.
Right. Yeah. I I find that a lot of people, it's almost like I can only imagine how many reports aren't made.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, because I know for a fact, like I've had a few encounters myself, personal, and I feel like until that muscle's like stimulated in my brain, like I start thinking about it, right? That I almost don't think about it. It's not
Hmm.
like it would, but then if I really look at it, it was one of the incidents was pretty traumatic, right? And
Yeah.
maybe that's why I compartmentalize it.
Hmm.
Um, but with that being said, I'm wondering fear factor. The taller they get, the scarier they are, right?
And that's one, that's another component of it. It could be that, larger animal elicits a stronger fear
Yeah,
reaction.
because not only do we talk in as data, like what for every foot of height, I can only imagine what the correlation to weight would be,
Hmm.
and that would also correlate to width. Just so massive sheer size, like the difference between like a 6-foot polar bear and an 8-foot polar bear is like 500 pounds.
Yeah,
You know what I
it would
mean?
be a lot.
Yeah. So you know what I mean. So
Hmm.
I'm saying so just overall size. But what about fear factor, like geographically? Do you have data on that or not?
I haven't looked at that. I haven't looked at how fear might differ between regions. I have enough data to do that for sure. But that's really interesting. I haven't thought about looking at it regionally.
Yeah, I wonder because I don't know. What about um, latitude and size?
Okay, so I've kind of I've kind of looked at this. I haven't looked at latitude specifically. I have looked at size differences between. I have a tendency to break up my data analysis, at least for now, into regions, because I don't have enough data really. For statistical analysis, you need like a lot of data. So really, I have enough to do it regionally. The height differences between reported Sasquatches from the southern USA and the western USA actually
Yep.
do not differ uh, statistically.
Really?
In fact, the southern Sasquatches were slightly larger, or at least estimated to be slightly larger than those in the west, which I found very interesting because we have this idea, at least that gets talked about a lot in the community, that the Sasquatches in Oregon and at least the Pacific Northwest are larger than those seen in the South. But so far, and that could change, I haven't seen that, and I've actually seen the opposite.
Really?
Yep.
The opposite.
So that was surprising.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising because allegedly, like and I'll just call it the skunk ape, are almost always considered smaller,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the data might not pick that or might not be right?
Yeah,
Or
I
that.
mean, I think it's at least at this point, and I haven't gone through all the reports. I've only gone through 1,600. I have, a couple thousand more to go.
Yeah.
So things could definitely change, but I do have a pretty good, mix of reports from southern and western states, to where we can start getting an idea of like these regional differences.
Yeah.
And that was one that really surprised me because that is an idea that gets talked about a lot.
Hmm.
But yeah.
So, talking to Scott Tompkins on the Bigfoot mapping project, we had talked about him earlier, before we started this. But his data is showing right now that as it stands for reported sightings right now, that he's got more coming from Pennsylvania than anywhere else.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you have anything that corroborates that, or maybe,
Well, the reports, I know that he takes reports, right? Like you can
Yes,
submit.
he takes
Yeah.
reports as well. Yes.
So I don't really take reports. I just am going off of the BFRO website.
Gotcha.
So the majority of the reports are from California, Washington, Texas, that kind of thing. But I haven't seen Pennsylvania. That's interesting, though. I do know that it's a great location. It does seem very viable for Sasquatches to live in. Interesting.
Yeah. Western Pennsylvania, from basically like just east of Pittsburgh all the way across, even into Ohio. There's just like
wow.
this big blob.
Hmm.
It's
That's cool.
pretty substantial. So, yeah, and that's where I happen to do a lot of my research is in the
Cool.
Allegheny National Forest, and there's definitely an uptick in activity. I think maybe it's because there's more people actually looking. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's just it's the stigma aspect too. I think is down, meaning
Yeah.
where people are more apt to give make their sightings known.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's really
So,
interesting.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to find it. That's what I've been trying to do. I was trying to find something that you had put out about, the probability of this being real. I know that you had put out some data that basically was like, yeah, it's real. There's like a 98% chance or something like that. I'm just speaking off the cuff, but I'll let you answer what the data says.
So I recently released a paper. I've been working on it for months and months.
The statistical case.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, the statistical case for Sasquatch. So this paper is diving into. I look at three different variables within Sasquatch reports. I'm looking at moon illumination percentages during the encounter, seasonality of the encounter, and also I tie in this witness sphere in relation to estimated Sasquatch height component as well. So by looking at these variables, well, let me back up a little bit. These variables are independent from one another, which is also very powerful. One does not influence the other. So if you can basically find the probability that one happens, if you have a subset of all of the reports in which you have data for each of the variables, you can then calculate, okay, well, so what's the probability that all of these things would happen simultaneously at the same time?
Right.
And so due to random chance, right? So
how very data nerd of you.
Well, I know. I'm like amazing. The ultimate data nerd. So, and very, very proud.
So amazing, though.
But you can basically like factor stack, right? And it turns out that all of these things that we see are statistically significant. So if you're only looking at Class A sighting reports, and you basically only grab the reports where all of these things are mentioned and I have data on, it kind of whittles down that 1,600, well, at the time of writing, 1,500 reports to 191 Class A sighting reports. That's enough to do statistical analysis on. That's fine. And what I found was that the frequencies in which sightings were reported under high moon illumination, meaning greater than 50%, was statistically significant compared to those that happened in the lower frequencies. They were more frequently happening in these higher moon illumination conditions. Seasonality-wise, summer and fall were extremely dominant. And also, significant compared to the winter and spring, which is interesting, and we can kind of get into that. And then, as we talked about earlier, this witness sphere height thing, that still stood even with the filtered data set. As witness sphere level went up, the estimated Sasquatch height went up, and it was significant. So basically in statistics, like you have this thing called a p-value, which is essentially the probability that this pattern that you're seeing would occur due to random chance. So if you just threw spaghetti at a wall, what's the chance that it would fall in this pattern? And for all of these variables, I found that it was, far less than 5%. That's great. That's a standard threshold.
Yeah.
So if you basically do some like data magic and combine all the probabilities to get your final combined probability that all of these patterns would occur simultaneously at the same time, the chances are like 1 to 98,000, which is crazy.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
What did you say? You're 6 times more likely to be struck by lightning
in your lifetime.
In your lifetime.
Yeah, then have this happen. And so that was like crazy for me, because when you're talking about, I guess just to back up a little bit, when we're talking about these patterns occurring as the result of random chance, really, to apply this to our subject, we're talking about if people are randomly fabricating reports, if these are all random hoaxes, assuming that people don't have a general knowledge of, ecological patterns and psychological phenomena that happen, what are the chances that, these patterns will emerge? And that's where it becomes very powerful, because once you also realize too, it's like, okay, so what are the chances that this is a huge coordinated hoaxing scheme where 60 years ago, over, 17 states that all these reports came from, they decided this is the pattern we're going to follow. You're going to say this, you're going to say this, you're going to say this, so that we can make these patterns happen. And also important tidbit, these patterns follow known animal behaviors. I guess that's a significant part too. Like, like it's stuff we would, at least from a biological perspective, expect. And in other cases, not expect. like the spring lull in sighting reports is quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
So yeah. So I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, winter I get, right? But why
Yeah.
spring, I wonder?
Spring is odd because we would typically we see predators increase their activities and just animals in general increase their activities during spring because, in the winter they were uh, either hunkered down somewhere. Food was extremely limited. So during the spring, I guess cornucopia, if you want to call it that, we see this increase in animal activity. So it's pretty interesting that we don't see that in sighting reports. Could be a human thing, less
Yeah,
people
maybe,
out,
but I
but also
figure
I feel like
like
more
I know
people.
me. I know I'm like wanting to be out in the woods. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like I guess, yeah. It's hard to yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I don't really know about that one. In the paper, I kind of like to play devil's advocate with myself, where I kind of look at the human reason behind the pattern, and then also like, okay, so
Yeah.
what's the biological reason for this pattern? Maybe at the end of the day, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I tried to make that really clear too in my paper. It's like, I don't know why this is happening, but these results warrant further investigation.
For
Like,
sure.
we can't ignore this. This is
Yeah.
something that needs to be looked into more. Um, and I hope that's the point that I drove home in that paper. It's like, look at all these possibilities. Look at how weird that it is that this stuff would happen. We need resources and we need more people looking into this.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I'm just thinking on my own, like going out in the spring, it's gonna be really sloppy out there. So it's
Mhm.
like, maybe people are just less apt, but whatever. I mean, that's a cool piece of data, um, for sure.
Thanks.
Um, what? Oh my gosh, I had the question and now it's gone. Um, and it's got to do with sighting. Come on, dude. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Um, well, either way, man, maybe it'll come back. So I mean, the bottom line is, how many sightings does the BRFO have, like in the data set?
I don't know how many sightings there are, but I do know that there are about 6,500 reports total.
6,500
Yeah.
reports. Okay.
So just general reports. And the way that I have the data set structured, which is also totally open source and free for anyone who wants to go use it, look at it, whatever. The way that I have it structured is not necessarily by report number, but by encounter, because sometimes witnesses have multiple
Yeah,
things to
yeah.
report, but they stick it under the same thing. So
Right.
really, when all is said and done, I mean, we're going to be pushing like 7,000, 8,000 reports,
Wow.
which is a lot
Yeah,
to
we
comb
gotta
through.
we gotta get you hooked up with Scott. He's got like 15,000 total.
Yeah, and I think I know how. I would really like to talk to him
Yeah,
and see how he's doing
we can
things.
make that happen.
Okay, that would be great because, like,
Yeah,
I know that like the things that he's keeping up with are a bit different than like what I'm trying to um,
but his
record.
reporting
But
system that he's getting, that for his reports, right? And he takes reports from everywhere, obviously. Like he's imported stuff from BRFO and other places, but he's getting his own reports, and it's very much just like BFRO.
yeah,
So it's a huge data set. It's pretty nice. Bottom line is, only one has to be right,
yeah,
or
and
only one has to be real.
yeah, for sure. And the the probability
Exactly.
of
That's what I'm
like
saying.
all of these being faked and hoaxed
It's
and not real
insane.
is just ridiculous. It's just not. It's just really not the case.
Yeah.
There is something going on, and in my opinion, just from everything I've looked at and read and researched, it's a biological entity, and it's some kind of great ape that we have in North America.
Some
But
sort of something,
yeah, some
right?
sort
Like a
of
hybrid of
something
some sort or
going
something.
on.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, just one report needs to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think like Jeff Meldrum's talked about that too. It's like you just need one real thing, and then it's like an actual thing. Um,
Yeah.
I've been reading a lot about primatology lately, and I think that's one of the best things that all of us could be doing to advance our own Sasquatch research and understanding, because it's actually crazy how similar the discoveries of the known great apes, like how similar their story is to what we're dealing with right now with Sasquatches.
Yeah. The
Like,
history of it all.
yeah, the history of the discovery of the great apes, like it is almost creepy how much it
Yeah.
parallels exactly what we're going through. And so I think like once you start learning about that too, it really puts things into perspective. Like, um, that Sasquatches are probably a biological entity and they're a thing that exists here in North America. And it actually makes a lot of sense that they would exist here and that they're a thing. So yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I'd like the story of the discovery, like the actual scientific discovery of the mountain gorilla
Yeah.
will just blows your mind.
I have a really good book suggestion. Actually, I was just filming a video before this about the book, so it's like fresh in my mind. This book is fantastic. It's called
The
Great
Great
Ape
Ape Odyssey.
Odyssey.
You write it down.
It's a really quick read, but it has so much great information about just the discovery process of the great apes and what they did to actually discover the great apes and like
Right.
get close to them and stuff. So I'm like, this is one of the best resources we could possibly be using for Sasquatch research, like just learning from how they did it. We
Yeah.
should apply it.
Right. So I remembered my question.
Oh, cool.
So where did most, and I don't mean geographically, but what where do most encounters happen? Like, are they like on the road? Are they in the woods? Are they, I've always heard like it's like road crossings or something like that. But do you have that
I,
narrowed down?
yeah, so I've also always heard that like road crossings are like the top, right? That's where most sightings happen, and I have not seen that in the data.
Nah,
There
that's
are,
amazing. See, I love
there,
that. I love this stuff like that.
but again, it can change, right? It can change. But I
Yeah.
will say that road crossings are not typically the most reported Sasquatch sightings. Typically, it's either residential sightings, like people are in or around their homes, or they're just literally like out in the woods, hunting, camping, that kind of thing. But the last I can't think of a statistic off the top of my head with the road crossings, but that was one of the things that surprised me too when I first started looking into this. I'm like, wow, there really aren't that many road crossings that get reported.
Yeah.
And it could be just like people aren't reporting them. That
Or like, did I
absolutely
really just see that or whatever,
right, right, and they're just like, it's late, I'm tired.
But
Did
in
I?
these circles, that's all you hear of.
I
I
know.
mean, you hear about it a lot. Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, that's one of the number one places for sightings is along the road. And
I mean, it is a good place to have a sighting. I mean, I do parse a lot of reports that are road crossings or the Sasquatch is on the road, or right off of a road, but it's not the number one way for sure.
yeah,
And that's part of kind of why I wanted to do what I'm doing too, is because I feel like, I guess to put it lightly, in the community, a lot of times we get these ideas and then they just kind of stick, but then there's not necessarily stuff to
right.
back it up. So that's part of the reason I wanted to create the Sasquatch Data Project and really start looking into what the data says and what the numbers are saying, so that we can kind of put some of these things to rest, and also start, uh, putting numbers behind our words. Instead of letting our ideas lead the way, let the numbers lead the way, and then we can let the ideas happen then. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, and that's been a fun part of this, is kind of seeing some things pop up that don't necessarily align with what gets talked about a lot.
What about red eyes?
Ah,
Glowing eyes.
the eye shine.
Yeah,
This is one of my favorite
this
things.
is like the thing. Yeah, I always like I've heard eye shine, but then I've heard nope, they were glowing red eyes or whatever. So
Yeah. So the eye shine thing is something I'm pretty interested in. I will say that red eye shine is the most reported color. So that stands. But the second most reported is no eye shine at all when technically there should be, meaning the Sasquatch was looking into headlights, a flashlight. There was some light source shining at their eyes, and the witness was able to see just the eye. There was no eye shine. So that's really interesting.
hmm.
Um, I've parsed reports, Class A reports that claim a whole spectrum of eyeshine colors. And at first, that didn't really sit well with me because typically within the same species of animal, you're going to have the same color eyeshine between individuals. Um, Now, there is some variation to this. We see this actually in like domestic cats. So, in different cat breeds, they can have different eyeshine colors. And in particular, cat breeds, they can lack the tapetum lucidum altogether. So, they have no eyeshine, which is pretty interesting. So, it could be that. But the chances that if Sasquatches are all the same species, that at least the ones that are living in North America, for the most part, we would kind of expect them all to have the same eyeshine color. Because if they didn't, that means that eyeshine or the tapetum lucidum would have had to evolve separately, yet at the same time, and in a
Yeah,
different manner. So it gets funky. When you start looking at that component. I don't really know what to say about the glowing eyes thing. I was actually talking to um, a BFRO researcher about this not too long ago, like a month ago, because he was asking me about like what have I seen with glowing eyes versus eye shine. Typically, in the data, I really hesitate to say that the eyes are glowing because like we don't see that in other animals.
right. Yeah,
So
no,
like I like to be open-minded, and if I'm wrong later, then that's fine. But I'm pretty firmly on the side that it's eye shine, especially when we start taking into consideration the situations in which people are seeing the eye shine, which is there's a light source. So like it just seemed, that screams eye shine to me, not
agreed. Right.
glowing eyes. Um, so yeah, the eye shine thing is pretty interesting because it would be a bit unusual if we did see this really broad, especially an extremely broad spectrum of colors from the same species or individuals within the same species. But yeah, I don't know. I guess cats had it happen, so yeah, but then also it's weird enough that a great ape has eye shine, but I don't really have that much of a problem with it because they're typically nocturnal. So like they
Mhm.
gotta see. Um, yeah. I hope that
Yeah.
answered your question. I just kind
Yeah,
of went
no,
on a
absolutely.
tangent.
I kind of look at it as in two like yeah, it's hard to say cuz I the the encounters that I've heard of where it was like glowing red eyes, the only ones I take as not eye shiner, like maybe like if it happens in the middle of the day, or
That's
like in the
interesting.
deep dark woods,
Yeah.
and those are far and few in between. So, and that's something I don't really know, and I just popped into my head though. Does the eye shine color give you any clue of what spectrum the animal can see in?
So the eye shine color, from what I understand about the tapetum lucidum, which is like the film at the back of the eye that
Yep.
causes it. The eye shine color has to do with I think it's the protein structure of like the particular protein structure within that lens. That could be wrong. It's some kind of something. But I don't know if it can tell us anything
I was
about,
just wondering.
like, yeah, I don't know if it can, because
Because
you know,
isn't like red eye, isn't that eye shine to an extent? Like in photos. You don't really see it much anymore, but you
no,
know,
so red eye
is
is
that
caused by the
different?
blood vessels in our
Gotcha.
eyes. Yeah,
Okay.
so humans lack the tapetum lucidum, which is why we
Yeah,
can't,
right.
like,
That's
see
what
it.
I always thought. But
Yeah,
yeah, so bizarre.
which I've heard some people say that it could be that we're seeing, or that people are seeing, as like a really extreme version of red eye. I've heard that a couple of times, but
Yeah.
from the descriptions and from the situations, it really seems more like the presence of a tapetum lucidum
Yeah.
over that.
Gotcha. Just because I'm wondering, the reason I say that is it's, can they see in the infrared? Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I mean, other animals can, so it
yeah,
wouldn't
for
be like
sure.
a
It wouldn't be
super.
out of the realm by any
No,
stretch.
yeah. I personally don't think it would be like that surprising, especially if they really are nocturnal,
Yeah.
which is questionable, but yeah.
And yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not that big of a gap either.
No, it's really not.
When you really think of it, like we're so like there are people that can actually see aspects of the infrared spectrum. So, you
Oh,
know,
that's wild.
yeah, that's bizarre, right? So I'm my one of my businesses is we do a lot of well, it's about the infrared spectrum actually. We use it for communication and whatnot. And one of our products is a crayon that you actually write in
Oh,
infrared and you can only see it with night vision. So
that's cool.
it's crazy. So
That's
and
really
we
cool.
can and you can even tweak, what wavelengths see. So yeah, it gets really in depth.
Whoa.
But
Yeah, that's wild.
yeah, so that's something I'm always interested in because what can they see? What can't they see? Anyway, um, so what about? So you brought up like blonde Sasquatch, like an overabundance of blonde Sasquatches in Alabama and
Hmm.
some other places where you wouldn't expect. What is the most um prevalent color overall?
Black.
Black.
Yep, black, and then just generally dark, which that's my way of saying, like, the witness was not able to determine if it was black or dark brown. And then the next color is dark brown.
Right.
So,
So it's
um,
dark.
yeah,
Dark.
yep.
Right.
And then I
Wow.
think red brown is after dark brown, and then I don't
Yeah.
remember the rest. There are a ton of categories that I've, I guess, created.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, the blind Sasquatch thing is interesting, because it really only popped up in this one section of Alabama and I think Arkansas, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, and yeah, that kind of threw me through a loop. But then I learned that there's actually like lore in Alabama about like blonde and white Sasquatches. Like it's a part of their folklore.
Yeah.
I think it's literally just called the white thing or something.
Right.
And it's, descriptive of a white Sasquatch or a blonde Sasquatch. So I learned about that after I saw that in the data, and I was like, well, that's really strange.
Yeah.
And pretty interesting.
What about white or black or white or gray, like up in New England?
My Northeast reports are pretty sparse.
Yeah, they're
And
pretty sparse in general, but
yeah, I haven't seen, just off the top of my head, there haven't really been that many reports of white or gray.
okay.
The most have
Because
come from the South.
yeah, that's so weird. But obviously, it's a genetic trait, right? That something gets passed on like that, which is pretty. It, and I think that your data kind of solidifies that too because it's in a smaller area, is what you're saying too, right? Or
Yeah,
more
at
of a
least
concentrated area.
yeah, at least for the blonde Sasquatches, it's in I forget which section of Alabama it was in, but it was in a pretty particular area. The gray and the white Sasquatches are pretty spread out, and I do wonder if that's like an age thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
wonder.
but yeah, I haven't noticed any particular clustering of hair colors in specific areas beyond the blonde ones in Alabama. Um,
Right. What about like silverback tendencies? I'm wondering, just because if we're talking about apes, I'm trying to like correlate data with male uh silverbacks. They get that silverback as
mhm.
they age. I wonder if is there a correlative thing in.
I haven't looked at. I'm trying to think the way I would do that. Probably looking at height estimates with the hair colors, because I guess we can assume that the males are probably larger than the females,
Yeah.
and so it would be interesting to see if maybe the gray Sasquatches were on average taller than the other colors or
Yeah.
larger. Um, I am not sure. Another thing to look at that too would probably be the presence of a sagittal crest, or
Yep.
the classic conical head, um, because I have a sneaky suspicion that that might be a sexually dimorphic trait. Because I've been kind of looking, I don't quite have enough data yet to really release any numbers, but if you look at the head shapes and the heights, it does kind of correlate. Um,
Correlate.
yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting too, because it's like, we see it in gorillas. Um,
Yeah.
and it's something that the conical head gets reported a lot, but so does a rounded head. I will say that the conical head is like the iconic thing that I think we talk about a lot, but there are a substantial amount of reports that say it was a rounded head like a human, um, that lacked that. So that's something I really want to do once I have enough data, is to look at the heights
Yeah.
along with that.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. It's just all these things. And when you start looking at it through that lens, you see more of you know, the correlation between existing species and, you know, I think that they exist, but I can't prove it. Right.
Yeah.
Um, uh, oh gosh, again, there was another question. Um, and it's just like correlative information that maybe you've put together or not, and now it's gone again. So, jeez, I'm having issues today.
That's okay.
But so have you ever had any encounters?
I well, I can't say for sure. I've had some
Can
really
any
weird
of us
stuff.
know?
Yeah. I've had some like really weird stuff happen that I can't explain with any known animal. I would say the weirdest thing that's ever happened was when I was living on with my parents. I was like a teenager. And I didn't really realize at the time, I don't know why, but I didn't realize that I kind of lived in a hot spot of like Northeast Georgia.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I could have been doing more, but I think I was like 15 at the time, or 16 or something. And I was woken up. It was the middle of the night. I was woken up to this noise. And the way their house was, basically, my room was like on the second floor, and I had this big window right next to the bed. So like I could basically see whatever was going on in the backyard. But it really wasn't a backyard, it was woods. So I woke up to this really strange noise. And at first, I thought my horses had gotten out of their pasture, because I had horses. And, sometimes you could hear them in the woods, just sometimes,
Yeah.
which I think is significant for the story, because, like, these are 1,000-pound animals in the woods, and just under the right conditions, you can hear them kind of walking around. But the noise was like this is going to sound so bizarre. It sounded like a demented turkey with a horse snort at the end. Like,
Okay.
it sounded like a really messed up turkey. I I don't know how else to describe it. And then like this big exhale horse snort kind of thing at the end. And I was sitting there going, "Oh my god, is that a turkey?" And I was like, "No, turkeys don't sound exact, they don't make that noise at the end."
The huff.
Right. And I was also hearing very distinctive bipedal running. It was 2 feet hitting the ground, running back and forth on the tree line, making this really messed up turkey sounding horse snort thing. So I'm thinking it's a really big turkey. But then I was like, and I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this? But then I was like, well, no, it can't be a turkey because they're not big enough for me to even hear their steps. Like, I can barely hear the horses in the woods when they're running around. How am I going to hear a turkey? So then my next thing is, well, maybe it's the horses. But then I was like, well, the horses don't make a turkey noise. Also, they're on 4 legs. This is 2.
Right.
So I'm just like, I'm kind of freaking out at this point because I had no idea what to make of it. And it was just right outside my bedroom window. So I'm like looking, trying to see. I couldn't see anything. And so then my brain goes, it's an alien. We got aliens. Like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And it was just really bizarre too, because like we had dogs that lived outside and they barked at everything and they were staying dead quiet. They were not making a peep, and I was like, this is so weird. Why aren't they barking? Why aren't they going crazy? Because they would just bark at everything. And so I listened to this for probably like 7 to 12 minutes or so, and it just went dead silent. That was it.
That's a trait in a lot of sightings or encounters, especially that involve dogs.
Yep.
At least that I've had, is that the dogs just go silent. They're like either, nope, I'm not messing with this thing, or like, who knows what it is, right? But one of our research area, not the one where I live in New York, it's my buddy's property, and he's got dogs, big old dogs that are guard dogs, and they do not mess around. Anytime anything comes near the house, they bark. Except for when it's a Sasquatch or something that we think might be. And they don't necessarily run away. They have, but they just shut their mouths. It's really weird.
That's it's something I'm keeping up with in the data set. I have like a column for that. Like, are the pets either nervous or agitated?
Yeah.
Because sometimes they will, kick up their barking or whatever. But and I haven't run stats on this yet. I need to pull data. But I do know that in quite a few reports, it is just like weird silence from the animals when typically there would be noises happening. And it's so weird to experience that too. Like, when you're so used to having like a guard dog, and then you're in that situation where they're just quiet, it makes you freak out more because you're like, if they're scared.
You walk over, you're like, where were you?
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
You're not doing your job here, buddy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's probably like the weirdest thing I'd had happen. I did get some weird like chatter, speechy kind of
samurai
stuff
chatter.
No, it was like, it sounded like speech. I have it recorded. It's on my website if you want to go listen to it at any point. I recorded that back in August or maybe July. I can't remember. But it sounds like 2 individuals fighting. And they're like yelling at each other and screaming. And there's also this weird whistle noise. It sounds like a flute, like a slide flute or something.
Okay.
And that's what kicks off the whole interaction. And then it's just silent. It's so bizarre. So that's probably the other weirdest thing. That one's more recent because that was just a couple months ago. I got that recording.
Is that when you did the audio, like you recorded basically everything?
Yes. Yep. And that happened. It was pretty early in the night, so I can't completely rule out humans. Because I think it happened at like 10 p.m. But you can't make out words, even though you definitely should be able to at that distance. It was recorded, and it was just a very bizarre thing.
Yeah, I've heard the samurai. Well, that's what we called it because it's what it sounded like. It sounded like speech, but it also sounded like just literally like they're like a samurai movie, like a just like made no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that creepy? Like, how is that?
It was. There was 3 of us, and all 3 of us heard it, and we were just like, are you kidding right now? Like, also the last time that we went out in Pennsylvania, we heard what sounded like chimpanzees.
Oh.
So my
Okay.
buddy, that was his first time ever going out, and he's like, do I really want to go out in the woods anymore? Like, he's having like a existential crisis.
Yeah.
And because it was like the second or third, we were there for like 3 or 4 days or 5 days. This was the third night. To me, the third night is when it always happens too. So bizarre. But anyway, we heard, literally it sounded like if you were watching National Geographic and watching two like chimpanzee troops go at it, that's what it sounded like. People are like, oh, well, that could have been coyotes. And I can hear that. I could see, but this was totally different.
Yeah.
Because there was screaming. And my buddy's like, did I just hear monkeys in the Pennsylvania woods? It's like, yes, you did. It was insane.
Oh my gosh.
So have you ever been, you said Northern Georgia, or Northeastern Georgia, you've spent a lot of time up there. Have you ever been to the Expedition Bigfoot Museum up there?
Yeah,
I
went for the first time on my birthday last year.
Okay.
I can't believe it took me so long to go up there. But it was really cool. I really loved it. I love that whole area too, like Blue
It's
Ridge.
gorgeous.
And it's so beautiful.
The Chattahoochee National Forest is a crazy place.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, that was a really cool museum. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I just interviewed one of the employees there, Amanda,
Was
the
it
Bigfoot
Amanda?
lady. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we chat online.
Okay.
And stuff. And she's so nice.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's pretty awesome. So that was small world.
Sorry about my dog.
The lick pad has done its job.
Yeah, he's done with his peanut butter, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is called Broadcasting Seeds, this podcast. So what I like to do a lot of times is have the guest give me their last plant the seed in someone's mind, in the listener's minds, on what you think they should take from all of this.
I think the main thing is that, at least from my perspective, if we want to get the academic community to listen, scientists to listen, or even just your friends and family to like not think you're nuts.
Take you seriously, right?
Yeah, like we gotta start looking at the data and the numbers, and we have to start running statistical analysis. We have to start letting the data speak instead of us speaking. We need to start learning how to how to take better notes in the field. How can we optimize our time? What are the things that are important to document? Well, kind of everything. When does stuff happen? When does stuff not happen? That's equally as important. So I think that's the main thing, is like, I'm really hoping that either the Sasquatch Data Project itself with the data set can help people do that. They can go run their own analysis. They can go see what the data is actually saying about particular traits and whatnot. And hopefully that helps guide them to their own, ideas, I guess, instead of letting the ideas take the forefront before any information's had.
Right. Absolutely. Like, use the data for sure. So,
Yes.
So tell everyone where they can find you one last time.
So sorry about my dog.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. So my website is sasquatchdataproject.com. The UPS guy just went by, so he's having a time. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. That's where I'm most active, at Sasquatch Data. But I do have Facebook too. It's also Sasquatch Data, and YouTube. But I'm most active. Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok. But if you want to go see the data set or download it, you can go to sasquatchdataproject.com, and it's there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We'll have to do this again in a bit, and we'll see what you've got with more data.
Yeah, that would be great. I really like that.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe all my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they fill in the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Drowning, I'm off the deep end. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are fading.